we, as a company, have the opportunity to impact people's lives.
In a true community, you have each other's back and you are for each other, which also means you can say it's a safe enough community where you can say hard things so you can get better.
We have high expectations. We're a high-performing team. So yeah, you're going to do amazing, awesome work. That's expected of you. So you're not going to hear great job because we expect you to do a great job. And no news is good news. Basically, if you don't hear anything, you're doing a great job. And that's just not good. It's not good leadership.
Welcome to the Rethreading Lives podcast, where we talk about how to take your threads of harm and through the rethreaded process, transform them into something that actually helps you reach your potential. We'll talk with different leaders in our city and our country and find out what they're doing. You'll walk away from listening to this podcast with useful insights and captivating stories on how you yourself can rethread your life and your business. I'm Kristen Keene, and this is the Rethreading Lives podcast. All right, today's guest is Tom Rossi, the founder and CEO of Buzzsprout.
Partner.
We
don't really have a CEO. Yeah, we're just
we're
partners. Yeah, there's 3 partners.
3 partners of Buzzsprout. You might have heard of it if you're a podcaster because pretty much everyone uses Buzzsprout to get their podcast out into the world.
Not everyone. We'd appreciate it. For everyone. Which camera can I look at?
Both.
This one for you.
Oh, okay.
This one, Kristen.
Okay. Go to www.buzzsprout.com.
And Tom has been my mentor since pre-Rethreaded.
The early days.
Yeah, when I really had a lot of ideas and really didn't know what I was doing. And you've just stuck with us and believed in us and helped us get here. And Tom, maybe you could share a little bit just like of your background, like your business background, kind of who you are a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I've always enjoyed entrepreneurship ever since I was a kid. You know, I loved the idea that you could come up with an idea and do something that would give you freedom and flexibility. And so I struggled for a long time because I was convinced I really wanted to be an astronaut. And so that's what I spent my time in school. Yeah. So I was an aerospace engineer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Everyone was like, you need to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, no, I'm going to be an engineer. And I did that. I got out of school and I did that for a little while. And then this was early 90s when the internet was first starting to really come out. And so I was like, start to make an impact. And so I was like, man, I think there's an opportunity here. And so I quit my job, moved to Jacksonville, and started really a client services business, just helping people understand the internet. Because this was when there wasn't web developers, and there's so many different niche industries. But at the time, it was just like you knew the internet or you didn't. And so we did tons of all kinds of different consulting services. And eventually we got into products and building our own web-based products. And that's all we do now. So Buzzsprout is just one of our products. It's the product that we spend the most time on. But right now we have 2 products that we really invest in. Buzzsprout, which has its own team. We have another product called StreamCare. And that's Marshall Brown and Lloyd Regis. You know, that's their baby that they focus on.
What does that do?
It helps physicians and pharmacies with workers' compensation medications.
Clearly.
Yeah. Look, I love SaaS businesses. I love finding opportunities. I find like little niches, and that was a great little niche that we fell into, and a product emerged from it. And it was just a great opportunity. But Buzzsprout was the same way. You know, Buzzsprout came out of another product that we had, which was helping nonprofits with websites before Facebook. I mean, in the old days, I don't know if you remember GeoCities and Angel Fire, like all these.
No.
Oh gosh, they were horrible.
I just remember MySpace, but I didn't have an email
MySpace,
until
right?
I was 21.
So M-Sites is the first product that we built, and then we just recognized there was a need for people to be able to, at the time we were working with churches, a lot of churches that were using it, and they wanted to post their sermons online. And my partner, Kevin, was like, well, that's a podcast. We should build a tool, to build a podcast. And I was like, I don't know if anybody's going to pay for that. Like it's it's such a niche. And we did it. We built Buzzsprout. And originally when we launched it, we had tons of churches that were using it. But then as podcasting started to explode, Buzzsprout was in a great spot to be able to pick up the growth because it was built around being very simple to use, and very intuitive. You don't have to be a technical person to be able to launch a podcast. And so we're in the right place with the right time with the right product.
And then how many people use Buzzsprout now?
I don't know. We have probably 150,000 active podcasts. It's
That's cool.
A lot of podcasters. Yeah.
That's a lot of podcasters.
Yeah.
All right. So you have been influential in my life on
Hopefully good. Yeah.
Yeah. Leadership
Good
advice,
influence.
business advice. Tom is also an awesome preacher, like super practical. That was one of my favorite days at church when Tom would come and preach. How do I start this conversation to talk about the Rethreaded process with you? The Rethreaded process is time is all right. Let me rephrase this because we had such a good conversation. I wish we could have just recorded our coffee a week and a half ago.
Well, I think you can think about the opportunity that businesses, whether that business is a company like Higher Pixels, my company's Higher Pixels, the product is Buzzsprout, but the company is Higher Pixels, the impact that a company can have on people, whether it's a 501c3 like Rethreaded or not, we as a company have the opportunity to impact people's lives. And what you've been able to do with Rethreaded is, you're hyper focused on that specific niche. And in order for you to be able to make the impact that you need to be a nonprofit, right? Like to be able to do the things that you do. Whereas I feel like as an organization, we get to have a positive impact on people as well, but we can do it in a for-profit capacity. But we're very similar in that corporations exist for the benefit of community, for the benefit of people.
So, and I've been talking a lot about business and its role recently. And I was talking with a PhD professor, business professor this morning, and he was saying that his belief is that most companies do not believe their bottom line is profit. And they kind of take care of their people minimally so they can make more profit. But then I feel like I know the best leaders I just know the best leaders who kind of adopt your philosophy that I'm using my business to affect the lives of those people around me. So how did that develop in you? Especially since you're an entrepreneur, because sometimes entrepreneurs are so driven that it's about the goal. It's about getting there. It's about the process and the end goal, not necessarily how you get there with the people. Like how did it develop with you?
There are so many things that I can know in theory and I can believe, but it's so hard practical. So I hate to make it sound like I've got it dialed in because I don't. But I have a good idea of the theoretical and where I want to be. And I think when you consider what you want to accomplish as an organization, let's just say you're a for-profit. I think profit is important. If you don't have profit, you can't survive. You can't, right? Like you're not actually helping people if you run yourself out of business, because now you've just upset a whole bunch of customers. Their lives have been upset, your employees. So profit's important, but it's not the most important. And what happened was at some point, I don't know when, people started adopting this idea that the purpose of a company is to create profit for shareholders, whether those shareholders are the owners or if they're truly shareholders. And I think that misses when corporations really came into existence. The idea was that we could do something together corporately that couldn't be done individually. And so there was a book that was really instrumental in my life called Servant Leadership by a guy named Robert Greenleaf. And I want to say it was like the 70s that the guy wrote the book, but it just aligned very well with where I was spiritually too, of just believing that people are more important than just cogs in a wheel of creating wealth for shareholders,
So in your life, when you read that book, like what was your circumstances? Like, were you married, kids? Did you have your own business yet? Like, where were you? And what do you remember, like what you started doing differently?
Yeah, I think when when I started the company originally, we were doing those client services, like I told you. And I was also a young Christian. I had not come to faith until later in life. And so I was trying to reconcile, okay, this has totally changed the way I think about everything. When I started to believe that there was a God in the universe who cared about me in a personal way, and not just me, but everyone around me, like that radically changed my life. And so it necessarily had to affect how do I think about business? How do I think about the future, of my life? And so that's really, I was gravitating towards books that could help me build a business that was in line with my faith and what I believe to be life-giving opportunity. Life-giving in the sense that life was designed to be lived in a certain way that's going to give you, happiness and joy and something that's more abundant than just money. And so anyways, I think that had a big impact. So when I read that book, it was filling in the gaps of, okay, what does it mean to be a company that actually cares about people? And regardless of your faith, you can appreciate a servant leader. You can appreciate a leader who says, I don't exist so that you can serve me, but instead, as a leader, I want to serve you because together we're going to accomplish something more than any one of us could do on our own. And so I think it just had an impact at the early stages as we were building the company. And so then you start asking questions like, well, what does that mean about compensation? What does that mean about benefits? What does that mean about the way you sell your services? It just has all kinds of, things that tentacles that impact the other things you do.
So do you have an example of, and then I have another follow-up question. Do you have an example of, I was doing my business this way with this structure, and then I had this change and I put servant leadership into my business, and then I started doing this? Like, do you have something different in your payroll or your compensation that you did different?
I give you an example of something that I spent a lot of time on in the early days. When I started the business, I already had that impact. So I was already coming. So it wasn't like I was running a business and then had this revelation. Yeah. So I was always trying to do that. But one of the things that I experienced, I briefly worked as an aerospace engineer, and I hated the evaluation process. Like, it was just a total joke. And it was not introspective. It wasn't honest. It wasn't transparent. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about, like, okay, how could I be a servant leader? I want to serve people, but at the same time, I want to help them get better, and I want them to help me get better. And so it had a big impact on the way that we approach our performance evaluations. And it's funny, we're in the middle of performance evaluations right now, and it's very similar to the way it was back in, the early 2000s when we came up with the system that we have.
And what's the system?
It might be complicated. There might be a lot to it, but the idea was we put together literally just hundreds of criteria of things that demonstrate the values of the organization. Mm-hmm. And then for each of those criteria, when you do your evaluation, all you're doing is marking, does it need improvement? Does this stand out as this is something that really you could improve in? Or does it stand out as something that's outstanding? Like, you stand out from the rest of the organization in this specific 1 out of 100 criteria. And if it doesn't stand out as needing improvement, and it doesn't stand out as outstanding, don't mark anything. There's nothing to talk about there. And what that allowed us to do was there was no numbers. It wasn't like on a scale of 1 to 5, rate your communication, which is how a lot of them work. But it's not specific. It's not, how can I want you to give me good feedback so that I can be better. And so we've always made changes to those criteria over time, adding, rewording, removing. But the idea has always been I want to get better, and I want you to want to get better. and when we do those evaluations, you review yourself, you review the other person, and the other person. I mean, it's a 360 review. It's just the format is built around, hey, don't we want to help one another, rather than I just tying it to compensation with something we've never done. Because how can I be transparent when I'm worried that this is going to affect my pay? When the reality is, if you're not performing well, it will affect your pay, but you don't need to tie it, with some number.
We don't do 360, but we do evaluations that are tied back to our values. Mm-hmm. Like, everything goes back to that. And we rate, you're kind of ranked on how you live out the values in the company, right? And there is no tie to compensation, yeah. Which it was new for me, honestly. I got that was from Jason, and I was part of a company that the reviews were nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way that we do it is you take the value and then you come up with, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 different examples of how you might demonstrate that value. So that way they can see a real picture of, so for example, one of our values is, continual improvement, that we're constantly improving ourselves. We're constantly improving our products, our processes. All of these things are constantly improving. And so you might have, one of the criteria might be, that you recommend or that you come up with ideas for changing things, that you stick with an idea, different criterion that just helps under.
I just ranked myself on those.
But coming up, I was thinking about what we were talking about before the show. That's why. Yeah. But yeah, whatever those things are. And I just think it's an example of how we can serve as leaders, we can serve the people that we work with by giving them an honest, transparent, I don't want to say a map for improvement, but something at least professionally that's going to help them improve.
So in the Rethreaded process, sorry, it's a circle. It's why I'm always pointing to the circle. Well, the first thought I was purpose. Like when you were talking, that you help and defined like what the person's purpose is in this company. Like you are here to live out these values to make our company better. And then community. I feel like the community is the other part that I'm thinking about is in a true community, you have each other's back and you are for each other, which also means you can say it's a safe enough community where you can say hard things so you can get better. Mm-hmm. And I think about so many work cultures don't have the safety or the company lacks the ability to have structure to help create purpose for their employees. That's what I keep going back to. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Yeah.
Because I think about it all the time. But
yeah, I think one of the challenges that we have when it comes to purpose, it's different for Rethreaded, where there can be a real personal goal, personal purpose. It's difficult. Like, I don't know that we have people that are that passionate about podcasting or workers' compensation pharmaceutical claims, right? But they can be passionate about, I want to be good at something. I want to be a master of something that I work on, right? I want to be with people that I can trust and respect. And, those are things that we can tap into. But I've resisted. I have to be careful to not project onto them what they should be doing outside of the office for purpose. But there is a massive amount of who they are professionally. Professionally, they're one person, but then they have their personal lives. And so what we're trying to do is to say, okay, for the 40 hours a week, which we want to limit you to 40 hours in the week that you're spending in the job that you're in, this might be your purpose. But you can have, there's a whole life outside of that. And I think now with remote, and as more and more people are working remote, it's driving even more of that question of, well, what am I outside of work? Because so many relationships happen in the work space. Well, what happens when you take that workspace away and people are looking for their purposes outside of work, which I think is actually a good thing to happen. It's disconcerting for people, but I think it's a good thing.
In what way?
I think it's disconcerting for people to not have those relationships where they're hanging around in the break room and they're just talking about whatever, and they might say, "What are you doing this weekend?" And they might do something that weekend. I was looking at how many people, the statistics of how many marriages were people that work together. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Because now that there's a remote culture, the chances of that happening are way less likely. And it was significant. I can't remember what the numbers were. There was a bunch of different surveys about it, but they were all double digit percentages of people who met their spouse at work. Well, that's not going to happen in a remote environment. So what that means is that there's personal relationships that people used to have in the office that now they're going to have to replace. They're going to have to find that personal relationship somewhere else, because if they're working remote, they're not going to hang out in the break room. They're not going to get together on the weekend and go do something. And so that's driving people to ask the question. And that's what I was saying is disconcerting, especially for introverts or people that might be workaholics. Now they're being challenged to say, no, we only want you 40 hours. Outside of that 40 hours, we don't think it's healthy for you to work more than that. So finding hobbies, finding other communities where you can find that purpose outside of work. And they're like, don't you want their purpose to be work? And I'm like, not really. For 40 hours, I do.
Yeah.
But outside of work, no. I think they're going to be a much more healthy person. And I can have a positive impact as an employer by actually providing them the opportunities to be able to do those things outside of work. Does that make sense? You guys don't have remote, do you?
No, we're like old school in some ways but we're old school for a reason. Like we have to be at work at 8:30. We have devotion every morning. There's no remote working, 8:30 to 5, because we want to create a culture. I mean, our whole healing model is based on people being present, and we're working side by side with each other for years. And that's how healing comes, is through relationship and through community, through knowing people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think it's pretty distinctively different than something like ours, where we're knowledge workers, where we like long stretches of uninterrupted time to solve problems. I'm writing code, or I'm thinking deeply about something that I need to write. I think that's different for our type of work. So we appreciate the remote work, asynchronous. We're less likely to, tap somebody in the shoulder and, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Whereas that would drive us crazy.
yeah, and part of that, I mean, I've never worked remote. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I like one day a week, maybe remote. But I was just like thinking about lunch today. Like there was probably like half went out and half we all stayed in. We cooked some ham and onions. We talked about how much we love butter. And then we did all the dishes together and just like had lunch together. I mean, just like with like people, like not just people enjoying being together on a lunch break. And I love it. I guess I still find a lot of my community and my purpose within my work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
I think it's much more challenging. It's much more difficult to build a consistent, cohesive culture in a remote environment.
Yeah.
But I kind of enjoy, that's the challenge that we've been doing now for several years. And I kind of enjoy trying to figure that out.
What have you learned? Like if you're applying the Rethreaded principles of time, purpose, vision, community, and openness into a remote work environment where you're trying to use your business to affect lives in a remote where people aren't together, what does it look like? Yeah,
I think it's what we were talking about is protecting their time so that you're 40 hours here, and we're giving you good salary, good benefits so that you can have a positive impact outside of work. The work that you're doing may be having a positive impact because we're helping podcasters get their message out, or we might be helping doctors and pharmacists. So for the 40 hours, that's what you're doing. But outside of that, there's freedom.
So when you talk about using your business for good, what does that mean to you? And
I think it's both those things. It's how we can have a positive impact on our customers' lives by providing them with intuitive products that solve complicated things in a way that's simple for them, right? Like launching a podcast, and we can help them. I love interacting with our customers when they tell us, like, I really wanted to have a podcast where I talked about whatever, this topic, and you guys made it easy, and I was able to do that. Like, we're having a positive impact in their lives. We can also have a positive impact on the lives of our employees by providing them with exceptional benefits and protecting their time. Like we were saying, we won't consume you. We don't build structures where you're rewarded for working extra time. Right? A lot of companies, that's what they do indirectly. They don't necessarily, everybody says, we don't want to do that, but they do, and they reward it, and we don't. So we want to have a positive impact on people's lives by providing them with exceptional benefits, exceptional protection for their time, making sure that we're developing them professionally. We're giving them the opportunity. Like I said, we're mostly knowledge workers, people that the majority of our work is you want it quiet and you're thinking and you're either writing code or you're writing emails to customers or you're doing marketing or, different things that require thought. And so we're protecting your time by not having ridiculous meetings, every other day, things like that. And that has a positive impact on their lives professionally, and it frees them up to be outside of the office to be able to do all kinds of things.
We asked our employees the question, how can we make your life better?
Uh-huh.
And most of our employees, we try to keep around 40 hours, and everyone said they wanted more time.
More time to work.
No, more time off from work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they wanted more holidays.
Yeah.
Even though I think we already give like a month total of paid holidays almost. And so we were talking then, what I've been thinking kind of a little bit through is what is a company's responsibility to help a person have their best life? And then what is the person's responsibility?
Yeah.
So them, they can create the best life for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a struggle, right? Because you're not their dad, you're not their mom, but I'd find myself doing things that I'm like, wait a minute, I shouldn't be trying to exercise that kind of control. You know what I mean? And so figuring out what does that look like? But that's a question that we go to a lot.
Right.
We did at one point. We said because one of the companies that we really like is a company called Basecamp, and they do in the summers 32-hour weeks where basically everybody gets a day off. Mm-hmm. And so we did it one summer. This is, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, and most of the people loved it except for the support team. Because somebody's got to cover support. Yeah. Somebody's got to be there. Yep. And so what happened was we had a positive impact on some of the employees and a very negative impact on other employees. And so we haven't circled back to, is there a way for us to do that? I'd love to figure out a way to do that, but not if it comes at the cost of some of the people.
Well, and I guess we're dealing with this. I mean, we have this whole issue internally about dress code because half of our people are internal, they're production, they're the warehouse. And then there's probably 8 of us that are external facing and have to go to business meetings and all this stuff. And we had probably a 2-hour discussion on jeans. Are we allowed to wear jeans? On what circumstance can we wear jeans? But it was very unfair because the production team always wears jeans, but we have to be dressier. So then we couldn't wear jeans. So is it fair? Is it not fair? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was like,
it's, I don't know how to say it. Sometimes employees make it difficult. I don't know how to say it. They don't necessarily understand all the implications. And so it's hard to resist the urge to feel like it's being taken for granted. And you're like, you know what? Screw it. Everyone's going to get dressed up now. All right, we're all wearing khakis. No more jeans, right? Yeah. But that's kind of like where you're like, screw it. This isn't worth it. But I think pressing into that and even allowing yourself to be, I don't want to say taken advantage of, allowing yourself to be misunderstood or underappreciated for the things that you might be offering. It's always true when you have somebody who's never worked for somebody else and they come and they work for you, and so they just think that this is the way it is, and you're like, oh, everybody needs to go work
somewhere else.
Right? They need to go work somewhere with fluorescent lights, and just so you can understand. But I think there's something to the idea of being a servant leader and how you want to lead your organization is recognizing that people might not get it, they might not appreciate it, but that you're not doing it for the appreciation. You're doing it because you believe that that's how you accomplish your purpose and your goal, whether or not they just take it for granted or whether they come back and say, oh man, this is great. Thank you for letting me wear jeans.
Well, I kind of analyzed myself in that situation and I was like, why is this a big deal to me? Like, is it a big deal?
Yeah.
Why is it a big deal? Do I really, our genes going to make or break us, whatever. And I think part of it was, there's also an aspect of leadership where do I trust my team to make the right choice if there is no rule there?
Yeah.
I mean, on something as ridiculous as dress code, but I found myself, I was like, I don't know if I trust my team to choose the right situation. And I was like, oh, I need to think this through a little bit more and do a little bit more self-reflection because I don't know what
to do with that, right? Because let's say that you do have the conclusion that I don't trust my team to make that decision. Mm-hmm. That might not be wrong.
Right.
Right? It might not be wrong to say, you know what? I'm going to err on the side of clarity. And here are the rules. We try to not, and it comes at the cost of clarity because we try to be real. Hey, if you need to take some extra time off, take some extra time off until somebody takes advantage of it. And you're like, oh, do I really have to go turn this into a policy? Like, okay, everyone is allowed a 10% margin if you need extra time, whatever. But I think that's what you run into.
I know. And then there's people on the team that are very black and white. They're like, I just need to know the rule. Yeah. And I was just like, and then part of us as leadership, we're like trying to get them to trust themselves. Like, if you are tired and struggling and you've worked over, go home. They're like, but I don't know the rule. What's
the rule? And then you're concerned that if you just put the rule in place, then there's somebody else that's like, oh, that's the rule. Oh, then that means I'm out. Right? Like whatever the thing is, they're going to take advantage of it. Exactly. And you're like, well, but it wasn't intended that everybody uses it all the time. I know it's difficult, but I've known other people that were like, hey, you can have as many vacation days as you want. Other companies are like, hey, you take as many vacation days as you want. As long as it doesn't impact the team or whatever, like you can take as much time as you want. And in those environments, you'd think that people would, be happy, but they're not because they feel constantly on edge. Like, can I take that time off? And there's some people that take advantage of it. And there's other people that because they're scared, they don't take advantage of it at all. And so I don't know. I have similar conversations all the time.
Well, my friend a woman now works at Rethreaded, and she came from a company where there was unlimited vacation and she never went.
Yeah.
And she came to Rethreaded where we have defined vacation and she takes it all and loves it. Lavishes it, like comes back refreshed and everything that a vacation is supposed to do for you.
Yeah. We just launched a perfect example is last year we've always stayed clear of, because my heart is for a lot of nonprofits. And like I said, I don't want to be mom or dad. I don't want to be like, hey, you should be giving money to organizations. So we've never done that. But last year we decided to do a matching program. So if anybody in the company wants to give to any organizations, we'll match. And then Marshall's my partner who's very practical. And he's kind of like a lawyer. Like he can find all the ways that people are going to take advantage of you, which is, what lawyers are really good at. But Marshall would be like, well, do we need to give them guidelines? And I was like, oh, do we have to give them guidelines? Like, well, what if they give to, what they give to Biden, they give to Trump, they give to, something that you don't want to be associated with. And I was like, oh, do we really have to make a policy about like it has to be approved and so we said, okay, forget it. We're just going to tell people, hey, we'll match your gifts to any 501c3, any nonprofit, and don't make us regret it. Like, don't make us do a policy. And we just got through our first batch of matching that we were doing. And somebody gave to Florida State University. And so that was kind of the joke because Kevin and I, two of the partners, are, big Florida fans. And so having to, write a check to Florida State was funny. But, that's just an example of where we didn't provide clarity. And so far, it hasn't blown up. But if it'll be a shame if it does, because then you're going to have to put together some type of approved, list of nonprofits that you can support, but we really don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that.
But it comes at the cost of clarity,
But what I find a lot in businesses and what I struggle with, like if I wouldn't have my team, that was one of my biggest struggles when I was starting Rethreaded and like building it up is I think part of being a great business and using it for good is providing your people with lots of clarity and direction and structure, which I failed miserably at until Jason came and Joan was there to help give financial structure. But until someone came with that skill set, there was nothing. And I watched the employees struggle, and I was underwater doing everything and not providing structure. It was not how I dreamed Rethreaded would be.
Yeah.
So, and I see that so much in businesses though, that are not well run because they don't have the right organization, the right structure, the right clarity to provide safety for their employees.
I think it would definitely be a valid criticism of a lot of times when there's lack of leadership, when our leadership is not where I would want it to be, it's because we're failing in clarity. But I think there are certain things that we should be clear about that are more important than other things. Yeah. Like clarity around which nonprofits you can give to, I don't think is as important as clarity around how am I doing in my job? What is expected of me, and am I doing what's expected of me? And are you happy? And I don't know if you remember, what was the festival that we had in Jacksonville, the Rethreaded one?
One Spark.
One Spark had Jack Welch come in and speak one year. And he said something that I've never forgotten. And he said that you have no business leading people that don't know where they stand. And he was talking about his daughter was working for somebody, and she wasn't sure if she was doing a good job. Like she just wasn't getting the right vibes from her boss. And so Jack just, made this comment about, you have no business leading people that don't know where they stand. And it hit me like square in the face of just like, I think we have people, because we have 3 partners too. So, well, maybe I made mom happy, but not dad, or, they feel like they need to make everybody happy. And so it just hit me that's something that we need to be harping on, is people need to know where they stand. People need to know, am I doing a good job? Where am I doing a good job? Where am I not doing a good job? And being really transparent about that. That's where I think clarity is super, super important, so that people know that specific thing. But it's so much harder around like, when can I wear jeans?
But it is. Like something,
I'm not saying that's not important. It's not as important, but it's still important.
Right. It's still important. And it still was a 2-hour conversation that we had.
Yeah. Well, any conversation that goes over an hour, you're figuring,
it was long.
Yeah.
But I also think, as part of the Rethreaded model, there's openness, which, to provide clarity, you have to be very transparent, very honest, and very open, because as a leader, one thing, I just come on the podcast talk about everything I do bad or have learned over the years, is it's so hard for me to give the harder feedback. But when you give the harder feedback, that's when your people flourish. Like the hard and the good feedback, they need both, because then they can get better. And I kind of just like would let things slide and not directly confront it. And then it just gets horrendously hard and horrible.
Yeah, it only gets
and no
worse,
one thrives, including me.
We had for a long time a common criticism, which was totally accurate, and which is when I heard that quote and it really impacted me, was I had heard through a series of performance reviews, I'd heard from multiple people that basically, to different varying degrees, I don't know what I'm doing well. Right? I don't know that we're celebrating accomplishments in a way. And I heard it from multiple people, and then I was like, this is a real criticism. And recognizing that our culture was kind of built around, we have high expectations, we're a high performing team. So yeah, you're going to do amazing, awesome work. That's expected of you. So you're not going to hear great job because we expect you to do a great job. And no news is good news. Basically, if you don't hear anything, you're doing a great job. And that's just not good. It's not good leadership. And so it's hard for us, because I think both Kevin and I especially, that's kind of the way that we are. It's harder for us to give the positive. We're much more likely to be critical. We're much more likely to point out when you go off the road, hey, if you're not hearing anything, that's good. That's good news. That means you're doing an awesome job. Because if you're hearing something, and it's not good.
We've gotten the same feedback.
Oh, really?
That we got the same feedback that we never slow down enough to celebrate the successes that we had. And that's because we were running 80,000 miles per hour, trying to get Rethreaded to a point. Yeah.
One of the things that we did as a result of that is where it's impacted the way we do our performance reviews, and that we're making sure that we're spending the time to point out those things that really are outstanding, that stand out. We're also doing, we work in work cycles. We work in a 6-week work cycle. So for 6 weeks, we're working on everyone has particular projects that they're working on. And then at the end of that 6 weeks, we all get on a Zoom, and it's kind of like a show and tell where everybody's talking about, hey, let's talk about this project that so-and-so's been working on. Let's talk about this project. And it's an opportunity to kind of highlight their work and to say, great job, go into this, oh, this is great. And, people are asking questions. And it's just I think that has helped us to stop and celebrate those people that just did those things, whereas it didn't just happen and nobody knew that it, hey,
you put some structure around it.
Put some structure around it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But looking for those opportunities. And it's, again, we're remote. And so looking for those opportunities when you can't just, walk over to their office and be like, hey, great job on that thing that you did.
It's scheduled encouragement.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I always have this conversation when we put together meetings, like, what is the goal of the meeting? The goal of that meeting at the end of that 6 weeks is not to communicate everything that we rolled out. That's not the goal. We do that, but that's not the goal. The goal is that we as a team celebrate what we just did for 6 weeks. And so that changes the dynamics, right? So now I don't need to worry about so many of the details. I don't need to worry about making sure that we're accurately communicating all of everything that happened. What I want to make sure is that in that time that we're going to spend together, the goal is that we feel celebrated. We feel like, yes, we just, accomplished something together as a team. And then here are the individual contributions.
And I guess at Rethreaded, practically speaking, every Tuesday, we have Ticket Tuesday, where you write someone's name on a piece of paper and you talk about how they lived out the values at Rethreaded. And then they all go to a hat and we draw prizes and stuff. But every Tuesday, we celebrate each other. Every Thursday morning for devotion, it's Thankful Thursday. We go around the circle and we say what we're thankful for. We do 2 rounds. And then integrated into like our quarterly meetings is what are the wins we take like probably 45 minutes. What are the wins? And then as an entire staff, at least once a year, we'll sit down and like, what are the whole wins for the year? And we sit all together, we write it on a whiteboard and like, here's everything we're celebrating. And I guess you're right. We celebrate a little bit differently because it's like someone got their driver's license. Someone got reunited with their child. I mean, like it's all of life. Yeah. Because that's different at Rethreaded, but it's very practical. The celebration part is super important to us. Mm-hmm. Our women don't get celebrated. And I would assume that probably so many of your employees do not get celebrated. Very few people get celebrated in their life. I think.
I don't know what they would say. Yeah.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
We have the advantage. We know a majority of our women walk in with severe complex trauma, and you don't. Right. You don't know your employees' backgrounds.
Yeah. And that's the minister side of me. Like I enjoy ministry. I love helping people's, personal development, but recognizing, you might be the boss, but you're not their spiritual mentor. Right. And so finding those right balances of, would I even know that somebody working for me was struggling with this thing? And that's really hard for me to know. It's really hard for me to know that there might be somebody who's working for me who's going through this incredibly difficult personal experience, but there's no venue in our company to share that. Right? I don't know. Like that's part of my struggle as we go to a remote environment. Whereas when we used to all be in Jacksonville and we were kind of remote, but everybody pretty much worked in the office. You were more likely to know if somebody was struggling with a specific thing because you're going to hang out, you're going to walk to lunch, you're going to go do something. But now that we're all remote, when are those conversations going to happen? But what's my role? Like I can't, hey, is there anything going on in your life I should know about? Let me tell my boss, I'm struggling in my relationship with my kid, like my teenager's not listening to me, whatever. Like, is that appropriate? Is that appropriate to bring up with your boss? Is it appropriate? And like, what's the venue for that? And so I think that's where I am of figuring out what are the edges of the impact that we have on, or that's appropriate to have with our employees.
That's so interesting.
Whereas for you, I think it'd be much more natural.
Oh, it's much more natural.
Is there anything going on in your life that, whereas, I think for us, it's different.
I mean, most of us
You're like, dude, you hired me to write code. Why are you asking me about my relationship?
Because we care about you.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I'm thankful for our non-remote work environment. I just don't know how I would do. The work I do is very different though. And my work is people. That's what I do for a living.
Yeah. Right. And I think they know what they're getting into, where some people might really appreciate that. Like, hey, they care about me personally. Like, I care about you personally, but some people might be like, you hired me to write code, leave me alone. Like, I have my own community. I have my own people, free me up to spend the time with the people that see.
Right.
And so that's why it gets, it can get really complicated quickly. If you force that on them. And so you have to figure out a way that it's not, I don't know. It's not forced on them. It's not too systematic. So like we do things like we have a message that goes out every Monday that says, hey, what'd you do over the weekend? That's not work related. And so people would share, this is what I do with my kids or whatever. And you get pictures, you get to know people a little bit better, but nobody's going to post, oh, I had a fight with my spouse and we're separated. Like nobody's going to post that. How would you know as an employer? And what's appropriate? How would that ever get shared? I care about that as an employer. There might be things that I can do to help, but how do you navigate that? And I think I enjoy the challenge of it, but I don't have the answer.
Right. And I wonder what the rethreading process looks like. That one of the values is openness, vulnerability, honesty, and what that looks like to build that into your company.
And so
remotely, safely.
If you work in a high performance team, if you work at Higher Pixels, then that's a requirement. You have to be open. But about what?
Yeah.
You don't have to be open about your relationship with your spouse, but you do have to be open about your relationship with work and the things that you do. You have to be willing to accept feedback and to be vulnerable about, man, I'm really struggling with this piece of code, or I'm struggling with this.
But not your life.
But not your life. And that's what I was talking about. Like, I'm not your dad. I'm not your spiritual mentor. I want to be there for you, but I can't force you into that. And so I think that's this new phase of the company, especially as we've gotten further, as we've grown. There's only about 20 of us in the company, but it's enough that now there's a layer between the partners and some of the individuals that are working in the company. And so they might not know you. Whereas before, it was everybody pretty much worked for you. So they kind of know, oh, well, Tom would care. Tom might actually, have an opinion or be able to help me navigate this personal situation. But if you're not working with them and they're remote, like, it would never happen. So anyways, that's some of the challenges that we face.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it makes me, I feel like sometimes I'm in my Rethreaded bubble. And I've been having good conversations about Rethreaded isn't normal. Like, it's this healing centered workplace where the point of our work is to get people to heal, to reach their potential, and maybe
in wholeness, right?
In wholeness.
Like, you could say that, it's wholeness for your employees, right? For the people that work there, your purpose is in their wholeness, and that's different than our purpose. We want to have a positive impact in their life.
Right.
But the edges of where we can have a positive impact
are different.
And it's not wholeness. It's not like, that would be a stretch for us, right? We're not going to challenge somebody and go, hey, you're off balance. You're golfing all the time. When you're not working, you're golfing, but you've got a wife and 2 kids. You should really spend more time with your family. Like, that is totally inappropriate. Like, that would not happen. And it could work the other way too. Like, I knew a leader who, wanted to model good servant leadership, wanted to do that. And so he had this great rapport with his employees, and he had an employee one time who came in and said, hey, I really need to talk to you. You know that my wife and I, we're pregnant, we're gonna have our first kid, and I really need a raise. Yeah. And it's like, okay, but you felt the shift there, right? At some point it crossed a line that it shouldn't, like, okay, hey, I love you're newly married, you're going to have a kid. Wait, you need a raise. Now we just shifted. I understand personally we have this relationship that I know this about you, but compensation isn't tied to your personal needs or our personal relationship. But you can see where the lines start to get blurred, you know?
Yeah. I mean, because we asked the question at Rethreaded, how can we make your life better? And like, as I'm processing this, and I was like, is that the right question? Because they gave us an honest response. We want to work less. Yeah. I was like,
Okay.
I don't know if I can do that.
Get back to work. We'll talk about it next time.
I was like, I don't know.
Wrong answer. Get back to work. Yeah.
And maybe it's because I was processing this then. Maybe the right question is, how can I make the hours that you spend at work the most meaningful, the most joyous, the best, so that you love coming to work and it makes you better and you can feel like you have space to be who you're created to be and contribute. And I was like, I wonder if that's the right question.
I think like for us, we asked the question of how do I make those 40 hours your best 40 hours?
Yeah.
So that's why we're so militant about protecting those hours. It doesn't mean that we don't have meetings, but if we have a meeting, it's because we have to have a meeting, right? We're going to protect your 40 hours. We're not going to have a meeting because we have a meeting every Thursday. That's what we do. We have a meeting. We have a stand-up meeting every Monday morning. Like, we're not going to do that unless there's a need to have a meeting. We don't have one. Stuff like that is an example of how we can do that. The other thing that we do is being able to work remote. I don't work well remote. I work much better leaving my house and going to an office. Mm-hmm. If I'm home, I get super distracted, kids, whatever. I go to the office, I'm much more productive. So we want those 40 hours to be whatever's most productive for you. I can be really productive at a Starbucks. I like to be around people. I like to be around energy. I get energy from being around people, but I'll put headphones on at a Starbucks and go to town and I can work really well, but not everybody's like that. And so what are those quality 40 hours for you to be productive? And that's what we want to provide. And what we found is if we do that, people enjoy the 40 hours more because everybody wants to be productive. Everybody wants to see the fruit of their labor, right? They want to see the results of something that they're doing. What sucks the life out of you is I spent 40 hours and I'm like, what did I do? You know, or I spent the whole day and I was in meetings all day long. I get to the end of the day and I'm like, there are these things I wanted to do and I didn't even get to do them because I've been in meetings all day. And those are the kind of hours that we wanted to, you know, cut out as much as we can. I'm sure we waste time, but not much.
You know, this morning we talked about the need for autonomy. And it sounds like you're fulfilling the need of your employees, a need for autonomy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was was it Daniel Pinkard that wrote a book about what motivates people, and one of them is autonomy. And so people that work at Higher Pixels are motivated by autonomy. They're people that say, hey, you give me a destination and I'll figure out how to get there. And they get energized by that, as opposed to the person who says, give me a task list and I will execute it well. Right? They're not going to survive at Higher Pixels because it's very people there value autonomy, which is just tell me what needs to get done and get out of my way, get out of my hair. I'll let you know if I need, you know, help. And so autonomy is something that you know, we value highly. We call them managers of one. We say that everybody has to be a manager of one. You have to manage yourself. That means you have to put together your own task list. It means you have to put together your goals. What is it that you're going to get done this week? What is it that you've got that needs to get done, rather than having a manager who's telling you all of those things. Manager's going to tell you where you need to be. I told you we work in 6-week work cycles. We're going to tell you where we need to be at the end of 6 weeks. How you get there, enjoy your autonomy. And if that's daunting, then you might not be the right fit for the team. But for our team, they're super energized by that.
I guess I do value my autonomy.
Yeah, well, I think all entrepreneurs, like,
I know, I was
the thought of somebody telling me, oh, this is what you need to work on today, I'd be like, what? I definitely don't.
Okay.
That was a lot.
I know. We're going to end it with a question. I don't know how long we've been here.
We have about 10 more minutes.
Okay. This is good. So, Rethreaded process is how we take our threads of hurt, doubt, shame, whatever it is, gets rethreaded through time, which is the ability to sit with your thread. Openness is the willingness to see your thread. Community is to invite other people into that process. Vision is the belief it can get better. Purpose is kind of the reason why you're here. So we have these things, and you implement this process, and the thread becomes something that can help you reach your potential. Out of those things, on a personal level, like for you, which of those do you struggle with the most?
Whew. So wait, run through them again?
Okay. Time,
community,
purpose, vision,
and
openness.
Openness. Oof. I think purpose and openness, maybe. I feel like I'm navigating purpose in a different way as I'm getting older, and you're like, there's all the books I'm reading are like Halftime and like all the what are you gonna do with the rest of your life?
Strength to Strength.
Yeah, Strength to Strength.
I've recommended it to like 4 people.
It's so good. It's so good. I'm still going through that, right? But I'm also reading like what is it? Mere Mortal. What is it? Being Mortal. Oh gosh, it's
good too.
Horribly depressing, but it is the future. Like we are all mortal, and so dealing with those things. And so I don't know. So maybe that's what I'm struggling with. Is like figuring out what does my purpose look like. And I think I'm starting to feel more like Strength to Strength. That it's more of like being able to do things like this, having a podcast to be able to help younger entrepreneurs that are at the beginning stages, to be able to share things that we've learned and experienced that could help them avoid things that they ran into. But I'm not saying that that's definite, but that's what I'm trying on. That's what I'm feeling like. In openness, I feel like I need somebody like that for me. I need somebody that's further along. I still need somebody that's older than me, that's gone through the things that's similar, that maybe has run a business or, has navigated that strength to strength thing of what do you do?
So is that someone that you can be open with, and that will draw honesty and vulnerability out of you?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
I have a hard time being open with. I think I would have a hard time being open with somebody that I don't want to say respect. It's not respect. It's that I feel like can understand. That's gone a similar path. Like you and I talked about this. I'm like looking for a counselor. It's like I feel like I have certain criteria for what that counselor has to be.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's wrong, but I could definitely, if I turned it around, I'd be like, well, you're putting conditions on who can speak into your life. But
I did that for so long though.
Of what?
Putting conditions on who I allowed to speak into my life. Yeah. I was like, this is real personal. So I got really bitter because I was like not married, no kids. And that's something I always wanted. And I would only let people who were like not married or went through it. Like when a married person who's been married for like 20 years would like say stuff to me and be like, whatever. But really they had great stuff to say still to me.
Yeah.
And I missed out on a lot of good stuff. So when your purpose gets collapsed in, what does it look like? What does it do to you? So if this is when, this is the...
I know, I remember.
Yeah.
We talked
so
about
like,
that.
what happens when your purpose gets... What happens? Like, what does it look like in your life? Do you like? Can you recognize, oh my gosh, is it come across as boredom or complacency or...
When I don't have purpose?
Yeah, when you're when you're questioning your purpose.
When I'm questioning purpose, I'm like, I'm going to spend more time on Netflix and I'm going to be less likely to get out of bed and spending more time, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know about depressed. I don't know that I get depressed, but I definitely get distracted. I go from distraction maybe to distraction. I'm not on, I don't have something I'm pursuing, but I'm like such a driven person. Once I dial it in, like I'll do that thing, but I need it. If I don't have it, then yeah.
Then it caused like, I almost like laziness, not laziness, but like an avoidance of
it's kind of
the
laziness.
thread. I don't think it's late. I don't know if it's laziness.
I think it's
an
'cause
avoidance.
I think both you and I have a high bar of what productivity looks like.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
true.
that's why we think lazy. That's why our brain goes to lazy.
True.
But it's
not lazy.
It's only lazy compared to what our standards are
Yeah.
for our ability to produce.
That's so
It's
true.
like, wow, you just spent 40 hours this week. What did you produce? And you're like,
Yeah. I only did this 80,000 things.
yeah.
Okay. Do you have any last words for our listeners?
I am just thankful to have the opportunity to be able to speak with you. So excited about Rethreaded. And as you move from strength to strength as well, of just your opportunity to be able to impact other people that, I mean, I'll never forget you and I sitting in Starbucks and on the napkin
on the
as
napkin.
you're like so excited with the vision that you have for what you could do to make a difference in the world. And there are other people that are right now writing on a napkin, wondering who they're going to meet with at Starbucks. And maybe they're going to watch this video or meet you at a conference, or you're going to speak at an event. And so I'm just glad that I can be here, be part of it.
You're a napkin friend. There's certain people who are the napkin friends that were at the very, very beginning.
You had it dialed in. You knew exactly. It wasn't like you were carrying one napkin. You drew the same picture because you were getting better every time. Right?
And the cool thing is, I have another napkin now.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the
You go from
Rethreaded
napkin to
process is like my new napkin.
Yeah.
I've driven it out to so many people, and I'm like, look at this. It's so
Yeah,
exciting.
and you have that, the ball,
My-
right?
my
You don't need a
spirit.
napkin anymore. Now you have 3D.
The advancement. It's
Yeah.
strength to strength. All right. Well, thank you so
thanks.
much
Thanks for having me.
for your influence in my life and your generosity and your belief and your also like the autonomy in which you lead me. Like, it's been awesome, the space you give me to figure things out, and also the space you give Rethreaded and trust you give us. So thank you.
Thank
Yep.
you.